his voice carrying that familiar rasp that still made my stomach flutter after 7 years together. I watched him through half-closed eyes as he moved around our bedroom, admiring the way his shoulders looked in the soft morning light. "Do I smell coffee?" I asked, propping myself up on my elbows. "And maybe something else?" Jake smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. I should have noticed that then. I padded to the kitchen in my oversized sleep shirt, bare feet against the cool hardwood floors. Our apartment was flooded with morning light, dust motes dancing in the sunbeams that streamed through the windows. Jake had arranged a small spread on the kitchen island. Coffee, croissants from the bakery down the street, a small wrapped gift box. "You didn't have to do all this," I said, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind, pressing my cheek against his back. "It's your 30th, Bianca, it's a big one." His body felt rigid against mine. I released him and reached for the coffee, inhaling the rich aroma before taking a sip. Perfect, just the right amount of cream. 7 years and he still remembered exactly how I liked it. "Open your gift," he said, nodding toward the small box. I picked it up, surprised by its weight. "What is it?" "Just open it." I tore away the silver wrapping paper, revealing a velvet jewelry box. My heart skipped. We'd been talking about upgrading my engagement ring. Maybe he'd finally done it. I flipped open the lid, but instead of a ring, I found a USB drive. "What's this?" I asked, confused. Jake cleared his throat. "There are some documents on there. I thought it would be easier this way." "Documents? What kind of documents?" I laughed, though something cold was spreading through my chest. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "Divorce papers." The mug slipped from my fingers, crashing to the floor. Coffee splashed across the tiles, across my bare feet. I didn't feel it. "Is this a joke?" My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "I'm sorry, Bianca. I've been trying to find the right time." "On my birthday? You thought my birthday was the right time?" The words scraped my throat raw. "I thought it would be better before the party. So, you'd have time to process. The party." 30 of our closest friends would be arriving at our apartment in less than 8 hours to celebrate my milestone birthday. The caterers would be here in 5. The cake, the decorations, the playlist I'd spent weeks perfecting, all of it suddenly seemed absurd. "Process what, exactly?" I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Jake ran a hand through his hair. "It's not working anymore. It hasn't been for a long time. For you, maybe. I had no idea we were having problems." My voice cracked. 7 years, Jake. 7 years, and you couldn't give me any warning. "I tried. You never wanted to hear it." I searched my memory frantically. Had there been signs? Late nights at work, weekend trips with the guys, the gradual cooling of our physical relationship. I'd attributed it all to normal marriage evolution, to stress, to anything but this. "Who is she?" The question escaped before I could stop it. His silence was answer enough. "How long?" I pressed. "Bianca, how long?" He sighed. 8 months. 8 months. While I'd been planning our future, he'd been dismantling it. While I'd been faithful, he'd been... "Do I know her?" Jake looked away. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," I was shouting now, my whole body trembling. "This isn't about her. It's about us. We want different things. We want..." I stopped, the realization hitting me like a physical blow. "You've already discussed this with her." "What we want." He didn't deny it. I looked down at the USB drive in my hand, this tiny object that contained the end of everything I thought I knew. "You expect me to sign these today?" "Take your time. My lawyer said..." "Your lawyer?" I laughed, a hollow sound. "Of course you already have a lawyer." The doorbell rang, making us both jump. Jake checked his watch. "That's probably the caterers." "Are you kidding me right now? You want me to deal with caterers?" "I'll handle it," he said, moving toward the door. I grabbed his arm. "What am I supposed to tell everyone tonight? Thanks for coming to celebrate my 30th, by the way. My husband just left me." "We can cancel." "No." The word came out sharp, decisive. "The party happens. You will be there, smiling, pretending everything is fine. You owe me that much." His eyes widened slightly. Bianca, one night, Jake. One night of pretending you didn't just destroy me on my birthday. After that, you can go to her. He hesitated, then nodded. As he went to answer the door, I stood frozen in our kitchen, coffee cooling around my feet, clutching the evidence of my husband's betrayal. I caught my reflection in the window, pale face, wide eyes, hair still mussed from sleep. I looked like a woman who had just been blindsided, because I had been. But as the caterers' voices filled our apartment, something shifted inside me. I watched Jake directing them, all smiles and charm, and wondered how many other performances I'd witnessed without recognizing them for what they were. I slipped the USB drive into my pocket. Tonight I would smile too. I would laugh and dance and accept birthday wishes. And tomorrow I would find out exactly what else my husband had been hiding. I've never been good at pretending. In college, I failed an acting elective so spectacularly, my professor suggested I pursue literally any other interest. Yet here I was, giving the performance of my life. You look stunning, birthday girl. Aurora squeezed my arm as she handed me a glass of champagne. 30 looks good on you. I forced my lips into what I hoped resembled a smile. Thanks for coming. Are you okay? Aurora's eyebrows knitted together. You seem off. Just overwhelmed. You know how I feel about being the center of attention. The lie slipped out easily, surprising me. Across the room, Jake chatted with a group of his co-workers, laughing too loudly at something someone said. He'd changed into the blue button-down I'd bought him last Christmas, the one that matched his eyes. I wondered if he'd chosen it deliberately, a final twist of the knife. Well, you pulled off an amazing party, Aurora said, scanning the crowded apartment. The food is incredible. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I'd spent the hours between Jake's morning bombshell and the first guests arriving in a state of numb automation, showering, dressing, applying makeup with mechanical precision while my mind raced in useless circles. The caterers had asked me questions I couldn't remember answering. Jake had stayed out of my way, retreating to his home office with mumbled excuses about work emails. Bianca, Aurora was staring at me. Did you hear what I said? Sorry, what? I asked if you and Jake were still planning that trip to Bali next month. The question hit me like a slap. Our 10th anniversary trip, the one we'd been saving for, planning for over a year. The one Jake had apparently never intended to take. We're reconsidering our options, I managed. Aurora's phone buzzed. She glanced down, then back at me with an odd expression. Hey, have you talked to Delaney tonight? Delaney? I scanned the room for my colleague. I'm not sure she's here yet. Oh, Aurora took a long sip of her drink. I just thought... Never mind. Something in her tone made me pause. What about Delaney? Aurora hesitated. It's probably nothing. Just office gossip. About? She lowered her voice. People have seen her and Jake together. Outside of work events, I mean. The room seemed to tilt slightly. What people? Seen them where? At that new wine bar on 7th twice last month. Aurora's eyes were full of concern. I didn't want to say anything, especially tonight, but... Excuse me. I cut her off, suddenly unable to breathe properly. Delaney. My colleague. The woman who'd sent me a text just hours ago saying she'd be a little late to my party. I moved through the crowd on autopilot, nodding at birthday wishes, accepting hugs I couldn't feel. My mind was piecing together 100 small moments. Jake mentioning running into Delaney at coffee shops, Delaney asking casual questions about my marriage, the time I'd found a woman's earring in our car that Jake had dismissed as probably belonging to the previous owner. We'd bought that car new. I found myself in our bedroom, door locked, sitting on the edge of the bed Jake and I had shared for 5 years. With shaking hands, I pulled the USB drive from my jewelry box where I'd hidden it. My laptop whirred to life. I plugged in the drive, my stomach clenching as I clicked through folders until I found the divorce agreement. Skimming the legal jargon, certain phrases jumped out at me. Irreconcilable differences, equitable distribution, no-fault divorce, no fault. As if 7 years could end with no one to blame. A knock at the door startled me. "Bianca?" Jake's voice. "People are asking for you. It's almost time for the cake." I closed the laptop but didn't move. "I'll be out in a minute." "Are you okay?" The concern in his voice made me want to scream. "Fantastic, just taking a breather." Silence then. "I know this is hard. I'm trying to make it easier. By serving me divorce papers on my birthday," I hissed through the door. "Or by fucking my colleague for 8 months." Another pause. "Who told you about Delaney?" So it was true. Hearing him confirm it sent a wave of nausea through me. "Does it matter?" I asked. "Were you ever going to tell me? Or was I supposed to figure it out when she showed up wearing my wedding ring?" "It wasn't like that." His voice dropped lower. "It just happened." "Things don't just happen, Jake. You made choices. Every single day for 8 months, you chose her." "Bianca, please, go back to the party," I cut him off. "I'll be out for the cake." After his footsteps faded, I reopened the laptop and continued scrolling through the documents. Financial statements, property assessments, bank records. Jake had been thorough, too thorough. Something caught my eye. A transaction history for an account I didn't recognize. Regular transfers. Always the same amount, always on the 15th of each month. The first transfer dated back exactly 8 months. I checked our joint account statements. Identical withdrawals on the same dates. My hands stopped shaking. The hurt and shock crystallized into something harder, colder. Jake hadn't just been cheating, he'd been funding it with our money we'd saved together, planned a future with. I closed the laptop and stood, smoothing my dress. In the mirror, I barely recognized myself. Eyes too bright, smile too fixed. But something had changed in the last 5 minutes. The devastation was still there, but beneath it, something new was taking root. I unlocked the door and rejoined my birthday party, scanning the room until I spotted Flynn, Jake's best friend since college. Flynn, who worked at the same investment firm as Jake. Flynn, who might know exactly how deep this betrayal went. As the crowd began singing Happy Birthday, I locked eyes with him across the room. Something in my expression must have alarmed him, because he frowned slightly, tilting his head in silent question. I smiled back, a real smile this time, because I'd just decided, if Jake wanted a divorce, I'd give him one. But it would be on my terms, not his. The morning after my birthday, I woke up alone in our bed. Jake had slept on the couch, his choice, not mine. I lay there for a moment staring at the ceiling, the events of the previous day washing over me in nauseating waves. Divorce papers, Delaney, secret bank accounts. I'd gone through the motions last night, smiled for photos, thanked guests, even managed to look appropriately surprised when Jake presented the cake. No one suspected the birthday girl was plotting revenge between blowing out candles and opening gifts. No one except Flynn, perhaps. I reached for my phone and scrolled to his text from late last night. "Whatever's going on with you and Jake, I'm here if you need to talk." I typed back, "Coffee? Today?" His response came almost immediately. "Name the place." 90 minutes later, I sat across from Flynn at a cafe 15 miles from our neighborhood, far enough that we wouldn't run into anyone we knew. I'd chosen it deliberately, just as I'd deliberately worn sunglasses despite the overcast day, just as I'd deliberately parked 3 blocks away. "You look like hell," Flynn said, sliding into the seat across from me. "Thanks. That's exactly what every woman wants to hear the day after turning 30. I removed my sunglasses, knowing my red-rimmed eyes would tell their own story. Flynn's expression softened. "What happened, Bianca?" I took a deep breath. "Jake asked for a divorce. Yesterday morning. Happy birthday to me." Flynn didn't look surprised. The realization hit me like a punch to the stomach. "You knew," I said flatly. He stared down at his coffee. "I knew things weren't good. I didn't know he was going to blindside you like that." "Did you know about Delaney?" His silence was answer enough. "How long have you known?" My voice sounded eerily calm, even to my own ears. "A few months. He swore me to secrecy." Flynn finally looked up. I told him he was making a mistake. "But you didn't tell me. He's my best friend, Bianca." And what am I? Flynn reached across the table, but I pulled my hands away. I'm sorry, he said. I should have warned you. Yes, you should have. I blinked back tears. Do you know about the money too? His brow furrowed. What money? I pulled out my phone and showed him the screenshots I'd taken of the transaction history. He's been moving funds from our joint account to a separate one, 8 months of regular transfers. Flynn studied the screen, his frown deepening. This isn't right. No shit. No, I mean... He hesitated. Look, I shouldn't be telling you this, but Jake's been having cash flow problems at work. Commission cuts, bad investments. He told me he was pulling from his personal savings to stay afloat. These aren't personal savings, Flynn. This is our joint account. Money we saved together. My voice cracked. For our future. I didn't know that part. Flynn ran a hand through his hair. Jesus, Bianca, I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't help me now. I took back my phone. I need information. I need to know what I'm dealing with before I talk to a lawyer. A lawyer? Flynn looked alarmed. Are you sure that's necessary? Maybe you two could... He's been sleeping with my colleague and draining our accounts for 8 months. What exactly do you think we could work out? Flynn fell silent. I need your help, I said, leaning forward. You work with him. You have access to things I don't. You're asking me to spy on my best friend. I'm asking you to help me protect myself from someone who's already betrayed me in the worst possible way. I held his gaze. Would you do any less if you were me? Flynn stared at me for a long moment. What do you need? Information on his finances, client lists, anything that might tell me where the money's really going. That's confidential information, Bianca. I could lose my job, and I could lose everything. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. He's had months to prepare for this. I got one day. Flynn's expression softened. He reached out again, and this time, I let him take my hand. I'll see what I can do, but Bianca, be careful. Jake isn't stupid. If he realizes what you're doing, he won't. I wiped my eyes. As far as Jake knows, I'm still in shock. The devastated wife who never saw it coming. Weren't you? In shock? I pulled my hand away. That was yesterday. Today I'm angry. When I got home, Jake was packing a suitcase. He looked up when I entered the bedroom, his expression unreadable. Where were you? He asked. Out. I leaned against the doorframe, watching him fold a shirt I'd bought him for his last birthday. Where are you going? I thought it would be easier if I stayed somewhere else for a while. With Delaney? He winced. A hotel. How considerate. I moved to my dresser, pretending to search for something. Have you looked at the divorce papers yet? Not yet. Jake zipped the suitcase. Have you? I glanced at them. I turned to face him. I'll need time to review everything with a lawyer. Something flickered in his eyes. Concern. Fear. I was hoping we could keep lawyers out of it. Keep things amicable. Amicable, I repeated. Like how you amicably fucked my colleague for 8 months, or how you amicably drained our joint account. It's not what you think, Bianca. Then explain it to me. I crossed my arms. Explain why you've been moving money every month since your affair started. Jake's face paled slightly. You've been checking my transactions? Our transactions, from our joint account. I stepped closer. What did you think would happen, Jake? That I'd just sign whatever you put in front of me without looking at it? He picked up his suitcase. We can discuss this later, when things are calmer. When I'm calmer, you mean? When we're both calmer. He moved toward the door, then paused. I never meant to hurt you, Bianca. I laughed, a harsh sound that surprised even me. That might be the biggest lie you've told yet. After he left, I sat on the edge of the bed, trembling with rage and something else, determination. I pulled out my phone and called Aurora. I need a lawyer, I said when she answered. A really good one. Bianca, what's happening? Jake's leaving me. The words still felt strange in my mouth, and I think he's been stealing from me. Aurora's sharp intake of breath was audible. I'm coming over. Don't do anything until I get there. I hung up and walked to Jake's closet. The safe was hidden behind his winter coats, a small fireproof box where we kept our important documents. I knew the combination: the day we met, the day he proposed, the day we married. Inside were our passports, birth certificates, marriage license, and a small black notebook I'd never seen before. I flipped it open, my heart pounding as I scanned the pages filled with Jake's handwriting. Names, dates, amounts, and at the top of the first page, a single word that made my blood run cold. Investments. "It's a Ponzi scheme," Aurora said, flipping through Jake's notebook, "or something close to it." We sat at my kitchen table, empty wine glasses between us, take-out containers pushed aside. Aurora had arrived an hour after my call, armed with a bottle of red and fierce loyalty. Now, 3 hours later, the picture emerging was worse than I'd imagined. "How can you tell?" I asked. "My ex handled fraud cases, remember?" Aurora tapped the page. "These columns show money coming in from new investors to pay returns to earlier ones. Classic pyramid structure." My stomach churned. So he's not just cheating on me, he's committing fraud. "Looks that way." Aurora closed the notebook. "Bianca, this is serious. If Jake's running an investment scam, you could be implicated." "But I didn't know anything about it." "You're his wife. You share accounts, property, tax returns." She squeezed my hand. "The lawyer I'm connecting you with specializes in both divorce and financial fraud. You need protection." I stared at the notebook, my mind racing. What if I could prove he did this without my knowledge? That would help, but what if I could prove he did it and turn over evidence? Aurora's eyes widened. "You mean report him?" "Why not?" "He betrayed me in every possible way." My voice hardened. "Why should I protect him?" "Because this isn't just about divorce anymore. We're talking potential criminal charges." Aurora leaned forward. "Are you sure you want to go there?" Was I? The Jake I thought I knew, the man I'd built a life with, was already gone, replaced by a stranger who lied, cheated, and apparently stole. What loyalty did I owe that stranger? "I need to think," I said finally. After Aurora left, I couldn't sleep. I paced our apartment, no, my apartment now, trying to process everything. Around 3 a.m., I found myself in Jake's home office, staring at his desk. I'd never invaded his privacy before, even when suspicions occasionally flared over the years, late nights, unexplained absences. I'd trusted him. What a fool I'd been. His computer was gone, taken with him, but the filing cabinet remained. I tried the drawer. Locked. I searched the room, looking for where he might hide a key. Nothing in the desk drawers. Nothing on the bookshelves. I was about to give up when I noticed the framed photo of us on the wall. Our wedding day, both of us laughing as we fed each other cake. I lifted the frame. There, taped to the back, was a small key. The filing cabinet opened with a soft click. Inside were folders labelled with clients' names, some I recognised, others unfamiliar. I pulled out a random folder and found investment agreements, signed contracts, bank statements. My phone buzzed with a text. "Flynn, you awake?" I hesitated, then replied, "Yes." "Jake called me. He's suspicious, says you found something." My heart raced. "Did you tell him anything?" "Of course not, but be careful. He's not stupid." I stared at the message, then at the files in my hands. Flynn was right. Jake was smart. If he suspected I was investigating him, he might destroy evidence or move assets beyond my reach. I needed to act fast, but carefully. "Thanks for the warning," I texted back. "Meeting with a lawyer tomorrow." I spent the next hour photographing documents, careful to return each to its exact place. By dawn, I had hundreds of images, evidence of Jake's scheme, proof of his deception. I finally fell into an exhausted sleep on the couch, waking to my alarm at 7 a.m. I had to go to work, had to maintain normalcy while my world imploded. The office felt surreal, colleagues chatting about weekend plans, complaining about deadlines, completely unaware that my life had shattered. I nodded through conversations, smiled at appropriate moments, all while scanning the room for Delaney. She wasn't there. "Delaney called in sick," my supervisor mentioned casually. "Can you cover her client meeting at 2? The irony wasn't lost on me. Sure, I said, my voice steady despite the rage bubbling beneath the surface. At lunch, I met with Marissa, the lawyer Aurora had recommended, a sharp-eyed woman with a reputation for ruthlessness in divorce cases. Financial fraud complicates things, she said after I'd explained the situation. If your husband is charged criminally, it could freeze assets you're entitled to in the divorce. So what do I do? Document everything, but carefully. We need to establish your innocence while securing your financial interests. She tapped her pen against her notepad. Do you have access to the accounts he's been using for these investments? Not yet, but I might be able to get it. Marissa gave me a measured look. Legally, as his spouse, you have rights to joint assets, but accessing accounts he's deliberately hidden from you enters a grey area. What if someone gave me the access information? Someone who has it legitimately? That would depend on who and how. Her eyes narrowed. What are you thinking? I thought of Flynn, of his access to the firm's systems, of his apparent willingness to help me. Just exploring options. Back at the office, I found an email from Jake. We need to talk. Dinner tonight? My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Playing along might give me more time to gather evidence. Refusing might make him suspicious. Where? I typed back. That Italian place you like. 7 p.m. The restaurant where he'd proposed. Was that deliberate? A manipulation to soften me up? Okay, I replied, then immediately texted Flynn. Jake wants to meet for dinner. What's he planning? Flynn's response came quickly. Don't know, but he was in the office earlier, removing files from his computer. Something spooked him. I stared at the message, my heart pounding. Had Jake realized his notebook was missing? Had he noticed the filing cabinet had been opened? My phone rang, a number I didn't recognize. Is this Bianca? A woman's voice asked when I answered. Yes. Who's this? A pause. It's Delaney. My body went cold. We need to talk. It's not what you think. I think you've been sleeping with my husband for 8 months, I said, keeping my voice low despite the empty break room. What part of that isn't what I think? The part where I'm not the only one, she said, and the part where I can help you take him down. I met Delaney at a coffee shop across town, choosing a back corner table where we wouldn't be seen. She looked terrible, eyes puffy, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, none of her usual polished confidence. Thank you for meeting me, she said, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug. I'm not here for pleasantries, I said. You said you weren't the only one. What did you mean? Delaney took a deep breath. Jake has been seeing at least 3 women that I know of, me, someone named Vanessa, and another woman I only know as Kay. The floor seemed to shift beneath me. One affair I could almost understand. A moment of weakness, a connection that shouldn't have happened. But 3? That was a pattern, a strategy. How do you know this? I asked, fighting to keep my voice steady. I found messages on his phone about 2 months ago. When I confronted him, he said they were just friends, but I knew he was lying. She looked down. I should have ended it then. I should have told you. Yes, you should have. The bitterness in my voice surprised even me. Why didn't you? He said he was leaving them. Leaving them for me. A tear slid down her cheek. God, I was so stupid. We both were. I pushed a napkin toward her. You said you could help me take him down. How? Delaney wiped her eyes. Jake used me. Not just personally, professionally. He had me introduce him to my clients, vouch for his investment opportunities. My stomach dropped. Your clients invested with him? She nodded miserably. 3 of them. Over $200,000 combined. Did you invest? 50,000 teules, my entire savings. Her voice cracked. He promised returns that seemed too good to be true. And they were. I thought of the notebook, the files, the pattern Aurora had identified. It's a Ponzi scheme. I realized that last week when I asked to withdraw some of my money, he kept making excuses. Delaney met my eyes. Yesterday, after your party, I pressed him again. He admitted there were cash flow issues. That's when I knew. And that's when you called in sick today, she nodded. I couldn't face anyone, especially you. Part of me wanted to hate her, this woman who'd slept with my husband, who'd kept his secrets. But looking at her now, I saw only another victim of Jake's manipulation. What exactly are you offering, Delaney? Evidence. Texts, emails, records of the investments he solicited through me. She pulled out her phone, and I'm willing to go to the authorities. I considered her offer. More evidence would strengthen my position both legally and financially. But involving authorities would escalate everything, possibly before I was ready. I need time to think, I said finally. I'm meeting with Jake tonight. Delaney's eyes widened. Be careful. When I confronted him, he got scary. Not violent, but cold, like a switch flipped and he became someone else. Her words sent a chill through me. Had I ever truly known my husband? I can handle Jake, I said, with more confidence than I felt. The Italian restaurant was busy, the familiar scent of garlic and tomato sauce filling the air. Jake was already seated at our usual table by the window, the one where he'd proposed 7 years ago. He stood when he saw me, his face carefully neutral. You look nice, he said as I sat down. I'd chosen my outfit deliberately, a blue dress he'd always liked, hair down the way he preferred. Not for him, but for the role I needed to play. Thanks. I smiled tightly. Why did you want to meet? Jake signaled the waiter, ordering wine without consulting me. I think we got off on the wrong foot with all this. The divorce doesn't have to be contentious. You handed me divorce papers on my birthday, Jake. How did you expect me to react? I know the timing was bad. He had the decency to look embarrassed. I'm sorry about that. The waiter returned with wine. Jake waited until he left before continuing. Bianca, I want to be fair. The settlement I proposed gives you the apartment, your car, and a generous financial package. In exchange for what? I asked, not touching my wine. A clean break. No lawyers, no drawn-out legal battle. His eyes met mine. No questions about my business dealings. There it was, the real reason for this dinner, this performance of reasonableness. You're worried about what I found, I said quietly. Jake's expression didn't change, but his knuckles whitened around his wine glass. I don't know what you're talking about. The notebook, Jake, the files, the money transfers. I leaned forward. The other women. A flicker of surprise crossed his face before he controlled it. You've been busy. So have you. 3 affairs simultaneously. That must have been exhausting. It wasn't like that. He sighed, dropping the pretense. Look, my personal life is separate from our divorce settlement. What matters is resolving this quickly and quietly, because you're afraid of what happens if we don't. I took a sip of wine, watching him over the rim of my glass. If your investors find out what you've been doing with their money, Jake's face hardened. Be very careful, Bianca. You don't understand what you're getting into. Explain it to me, then. He glanced around, then lowered his voice. The market turned. Investments that should have paid off didn't. I had to cover losses, keep clients happy until things recovered. By using new clients' money to pay earlier investors. I shook my head. That's fraud, Jake. It's temporary reallocation during a market correction. His tone was defensive. Everyone does it. Does Delaney know that? Or Vanessa? Or Kay? Whoever she is? Jake's eyes narrowed. You've been talking to Delaney. She came to me. She knows what you're doing. And what exactly does she think she knows? His voice was dangerously soft. Enough to go to the authorities. I met his gaze steadily. Unless what? Unless you give me what I want in the divorce. Everything I want. Jake studied me for a long moment, then smiled, a cold smile I'd never seen before. You're blackmailing me. I'm negotiating. I stood up, leaving my wine untouched. Think about it. I'll give you 3 days. As I walked out, my phone buzzed with a text from Flynn. Jake emptied the joint account, all of it. Call me. I stopped in the middle of the sidewalk, my heart pounding. Jake hadn't come to dinner to negotiate. He'd come to distract me while he moved the last of our money. And I'd just shown my hand. He can't do that, I said, pacing Flynn's living room. That money was mine too. Flynn watched me from his couch, concern etched on his face. Technically, he can. Joint accounts mean either party can withdraw funds. $70,000, Flynn. Our entire savings. My voice cracked. How is this legal? It's not ethical, but it's legal. Flynn ran a hand through his hair. The good news is it creates a paper trail. Your lawyer can use this to show he's acting in bad faith. I laughed bitterly. Great, I'll be vindicated while I'm living on the street. You won't be on the street. The apartment's in both your names and you're still employed. Flynn hesitated. And I'm here for you. I stopped pacing to look at him. In the 7 years I'd known Flynn as Jake's best friend, I'd never been alone with him like this. In his apartment at midnight, both of us raw with emotion. There was something disconcerting about seeing him separate from Jake, like a planet that had broken free of its sun. Why are you helping me? I asked. Jake's been your friend since college. Flynn met my gaze steadily. Because what he's doing is wrong. And because... He trailed off. Because what? Because I've always cared about you, Bianca. More than I should have. The admission hung in the air between us. I felt a flicker of something. Surprise, confusion, a strange warmth, before reality crashed back. I can't deal with that right now, I said honestly. I know, Flynn nodded. I shouldn't have said anything. Let's focus on what matters, stopping Jake before he hurts more people. My phone buzzed with a text from Delaney. Jake called. Wants to meet tomorrow. Says he can return my investment. Should I go? It's a trap, Flynn said, reading over my shoulder. He's trying to buy her silence. Or worse. I remembered Delaney's words. When I confronted him, he got scary. I need to warn her. I called Delaney, putting her on speaker so Flynn could hear. Don't meet him alone, I said when she answered. He emptied our joint account tonight. He's desperate. What should I do? Delaney's voice was small, frightened. Flynn leaned toward the phone. Tell him you'll meet, but in a public place. Stall him. Who's that? Delaney asked. Flynn, I explained. Jake's friend. He's helping me. A pause. Can we trust him? I looked at Flynn, at the determination in his eyes. Yes, I said. I think we can. After hanging up, Flynn pulled out his laptop. We need to move fast. Jake knows we're onto him, and he's liquidating assets. How do you know? I checked the firm's system before you arrived. He's been moving client funds all day. Flynn typed rapidly. If we're going to stop him, we need leverage. What kind of leverage? Information. Flynn turned the screen toward me. Client lists, account numbers, transaction histories, everything he's been hiding. I stared at the screen at columns of names and numbers. Is this legal? No. Flynn's expression was grim. But neither is what Jake's doing. These are real people, Bianca. People who trusted him with their life savings. The weight of it all suddenly crashed down on me. This wasn't just about my broken marriage anymore. It wasn't even about Jake's betrayal. Real people would lose everything if Jake wasn't stopped. What do we do with this information? I asked. We take it to your lawyer, and, if necessary, to the authorities. Flynn closed the laptop, but first we need to secure your position. How? By beating Jake at his own game. Dawn found me back in my apartment, exhausted but clear-headed. Flynn's plan was risky, possibly crossing ethical lines, but I couldn't see another option. Jake had forced my hand. I showered and dressed carefully, professional, polished, nothing that would hint at the turmoil of the past few days. At precisely 8:30 a.m., I walked into my bank. I'd like to speak with a manager, I told the teller. It's regarding possible fraudulent activity on my accounts. 20 minutes later, I sat across from a concerned bank manager, documents spread between us. Marriage certificate, identification, bank statements showing the sudden withdrawal. Ms., I corrected. I'm in the process of divorcing. Ms. Bianca, he amended. While I sympathize with your situation, your husband had legal access to those funds. I understand that. I slid forward the documents Flynn had helped me prepare. What I'm concerned about are these other accounts. The manager frowned, reviewing the papers. These accounts aren't with our bank. No, but they're linked to accounts that are. My husband has been moving money between them as part of an investment fraud scheme. I kept my voice steady. I'm reporting this to protect myself from liability and to protect your bank from potential involvement in criminal activity. His expression changed from skepticism to concern. These are serious allegations. Yes, they are, which is why I've already scheduled a meeting with financial crimes investigators. This wasn't strictly true yet. I wanted to give your institution the courtesy of advance notice. By the time I left the bank, I had accomplished what Flynn and I had planned, creating an official record of my concerns, separating myself from Jake's activities, and most importantly, freezing the remaining joint accounts Jake hadn't yet emptied. My phone rang as I reached my car. "Jake, what did you do?" he demanded when I answered. "What I had to." My voice was calmer than I felt. "You left me no choice." "Do you have any idea what you've started? The accounts are frozen. I can't access anything." That was the point. People will lose everything, Bianca, not just me, clients, friends, people we care about. People already have lost everything, I countered. Delaney, the other investors you scammed, me. This isn't a game. His voice dropped, became dangerous. You have no idea what you're dealing with. Then enlighten me. Who's Kay, Jake? Another girlfriend? Another victim? A long pause. Where are you right now? The question sent a chill through me. Why? Because we need to talk. In person. Immediately. I don't think so. Bianca. Something in his tone made me pause. There are things you don't understand. Dangerous things. You need to stop this now before people get hurt. The only person getting hurt is you, I said. But doubt crept in. Jake sounded genuinely frightened. It's not me I'm worried about. His voice dropped lower. Check your email. Now. I hung up and opened my email on my phone. A new message from Jake contained a single attachment. A photo. My sister Reagan sitting at a cafe, unaware she was being photographed. A text followed. She has no idea what you've done. What it might cost her. My hands shook so badly I could barely dial Flynn's number. He's threatening my sister, I said when he answered, my voice barely a whisper. Where are you? Flynn asked, urgency sharpening his tone. In my car, outside the bank. I stared at the photo of Reagan, trying to determine when it had been taken. Flynn, he knows where she is. Don't move. I'm coming to you. I hung up and immediately called Reagan. It went straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. My phone buzzed with another text from Jake. 1 hour. Our apartment. Come alone or I call my associate. Associate. The word sent ice through my veins. This wasn't just Jake anymore. He had help. Connections I knew nothing about. And they were watching my sister. Flynn arrived in 15 minutes, his face grim as I showed him the messages. This changes everything, he said. We need to call the police. And tell them what? That my husband sent me a photo of my sister? I shook my head. They won't do anything until someone actually gets hurt. Then we need to warn Reagan. I've tried. She's not answering. My voice cracked. Flynn, I have to meet him. That's exactly what he wants. I don't have a choice. I looked at my watch. 40 minutes. I need to go home and face him. Flynn grabbed my arm. Not alone. I'm coming with you. He said to come alone. I'll stay out of sight. But I'm not letting you face him by yourself. The drive to my apartment felt surreal, like I was watching someone else navigate through traffic, someone else's hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. Flynn followed in his car, staying several vehicles behind as we'd planned. I tried Reagan again. Voicemail. I left a message. Call me as soon as you get this. It's an emergency. As I parked outside our building, another text arrived from Jake. Come up. Door's unlocked, Flynn called. I'm parked down the block. I'll give you 10 minutes, then I'm coming in. If anything happens to Reagan, it won't, he said firmly. We'll fix this. I took the elevator to our floor, my heart hammering against my ribs. The hallway stretched before me longer than I remembered. Our door, my door, stood slightly ajar. I pushed it open slowly. Jake sat at our dining table, a laptop open before him, looking strangely calm. No sign of anyone else. Where's Reagan? I demanded, not moving from the doorway. Safe, for now. He gestured to the chair across from him. Sit down, Bianca. I remained standing. If you've hurt her, I haven't touched her. This isn't about hurting anyone. Jake's voice was eerily controlled. It's about fixing the mess you've created. The mess I've created? Anger flared, momentarily overriding my fear. You stole from me, from your clients. You cheated with multiple women. You threatened my sister. I did what was necessary. Jake's expression hardened. Do you have any idea what you've done by freezing those accounts? People are expecting their returns. Important people. Your Ponzi scheme is falling apart. That's not my problem. Jake laughed, a hollow sound. You think this is just about bad investments? This is bigger than you understand. Then explain it to me. I finally moved to the table, standing behind the chair he'd indicated. Who's Kay? Something flickered in Jake's eyes. You don't want to know. I think I do. Jake sighed, running a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it made my chest ache despite everything. Constantine. He provided the initial capital for my investment fund. And he expects his money back. With interest. Jake looked up at me, real fear in his eyes. He's not someone you disappoint. The pieces clicked into place. Money laundering. That's what this is, isn't it? You're cleaning money for someone dangerous. Jake didn't deny it. It started small, just a favor for a friend of a client. Then it grew. And the affairs? Were they just favors too? Vanessa is Constantine's sister. The relationship was expected. Jake at least had the decency to look ashamed. Delaney was a mistake. A real one. And the third woman. There is no third woman, just Vanessa and Delaney. I thought of the notebook, the mysterious K listed alongside regular payments. You're lying. Bianca, listen to me. Jake leaned forward. You need to unfreeze those accounts. Tell the bank it was a misunderstanding. We can still fix this. There's no we anymore, Jake. Then do it for Reagan. His voice hardened. Constantine's people are watching her right now. One call from me and you wouldn't. But looking at this stranger who wore my husband's face, I wasn't certain. I don't want to, but I will if I have to. Jake pushed the laptop toward me. Bank website's already open. Log in and reverse what you did. My mind raced. If I complied, Jake would continue his scheme, continue hurting people. If I refused, Reagan might pay the price. I needed time, needed help. As if on cue, my phone buzzed. A text from Flynn. Coming in, get ready. I took a deep breath and sat down. Show me Reagan is safe first. A phone call right now. Jake hesitated, then nodded. He pulled out his phone and dialed, putting it on speaker. Hello? Reagan's voice filled the room. Reagan, it's me, I said quickly. Are you okay? Bianca, yeah, I'm fine. I'm at work. Why? Where were you this morning? Around 9? Coffee shop on 5th, then yoga. Why? What's going on? Jake ended the call, his expression unreadable. Satisfied? I nodded slowly, buying time. The photo? It was from this morning? Does it matter? You know I'm serious now. I know you're desperate. I reached for the laptop, pretending to comply. But so am I. In one swift motion, I grabbed the laptop and hurled it against the wall. It shattered with a satisfying crash just as the front door burst open. Flynn rushed in, followed by 2 people in suits, the financial crimes investigators I'd contacted after leaving the bank. Jacob, one of them said, we have some questions about your investment activities. Jake stared at me, betrayal and fury warring in his eyes. You set me up. No, Jake. I stood, suddenly feeling stronger than I had in days. You did that all by yourself. The investigators led Jake away in handcuffs, his face a mask of cold fury. He didn't look back at me, not once. 7 years of marriage, and he walked out of our home, out of my life, without a single glance. I stood in the wreckage of our living room, the shattered laptop a fitting metaphor for everything else that had broken beyond repair. You okay? Flynn asked, his hand warm on my shoulder. No, I answered honestly, but I will be. The next few days passed in a blur of statements and signatures. Jake was charged with multiple counts of fraud and money laundering. His associate Constantine was already under federal investigation, and Jake's arrest provided the final evidence they needed. Vanessa disappeared, likely fled the country, according to the investigators. Delaney cooperated fully, turning over all her communications with Jake. She stopped by my office a week after his arrest, hovering awkwardly in my doorway. "I don't expect forgiveness," she said. "I just wanted you to know I'm leaving the company. It's the least I can do." I studied her face, the dark circles under her eyes, the weight she'd lost. "You were a victim too, Delaney. Not like you." She twisted her hands together. "I knew he was married. I chose to ignore it because I wanted to believe he'd leave you for me. That's not something I can blame on Jake." Her honesty surprised me. "What will you do now?" "Move back home for a while. Start over." She attempted a smile. "The investigators think we might get some of our money back eventually." "I hope so." I meant it, despite everything. After she left, I sat at my desk, staring at the framed photo I still hadn't removed. Jake and me on our honeymoon, laughing on a beach at sunset. I finally placed it face down in my drawer. Not thrown away, but no longer defining my present. That evening, I met Aurora for dinner. She'd been my rock through everything, fielding calls from concerned friends, bringing groceries when I couldn't face the store, sitting with me through sleepless nights. "The lawyer called," I told her as we settled into our booth. "The divorce will be finalized soon given the circumstances, and they've located most of the money Jake moved from our joint account." "That's something at least." Aurora squeezed my hand. "How are you really doing?" I considered the question. "I'm angry. I'm hurt. I'm embarrassed for not seeing what was happening." "You couldn't have known." "Couldn't I?" I shook my head. There were signs. I chose not to see them because the truth was too painful. That's not weakness, Bianca. It's human nature. Maybe. I sipped my wine. But I'm done ignoring red flags. Done making excuses for people who don't deserve them. Aurora studied me. "You've changed." "Had to." I smiled slightly. Turns out divorce papers make excellent wake-up calls. Later that night, I returned to my apartment. Mine alone now, Jake's belongings removed by his lawyer. The emptiness felt strange, but not entirely unwelcome. I kicked off my shoes and padded to the kitchen where a stack of mail waited. Among the bills and sympathy cards was a thick envelope from Jake's investment firm. Inside, I found account statements and a handwritten note from Flynn. "Thought you should have these. Call me when you're ready." The statements revealed something I hadn't known, an account in my name containing nearly $200,000. Money Jake had apparently set aside, separate from his schemes. A nest egg, or perhaps a contingency plan. My phone rang, startling me. Reagan. "I just heard from Mom," she said when I answered. "Is it true? Jake's going to prison?" "Probably." I sank onto the couch. "The evidence is overwhelming." "God, Bianca, I still can't believe it." She paused. "Mom's worried about you. She thinks you should come stay with them for a while." "I'm not running home to hide." The firmness in my voice surprised even me. "This is my home, my life. I'm not abandoning it because Jake betrayed me." "That's my big sister." I could hear the smile in Reagan's voice. "Strong as hell." After we hung up, I returned to the financial documents, studying them with new understanding. Jake had hidden money, but he'd put it in my name, protected it from his creditors, from Constantine, perhaps even from himself. His final gift? Or his final manipulation? I thought of Jake's face when the investigators arrived, the shock, the anger, but also something else. Relief, perhaps. As if some part of him had wanted to be caught, wanted it all to end. The next morning, I woke early and did something I'd been avoiding. I opened the safe where we'd kept our most important documents. Inside, beside our marriage certificate and property deeds, I found a sealed envelope with my name on it, Jake's handwriting. I almost threw it away unopened. What could he possibly say that would matter now? But curiosity won out. Inside was a single page, dated 3 days before my birthday. "Bianca, by the time you read this, you'll hate me. You should. What I've done is unforgivable. I started with good intentions that curdled into something ugly. Each compromise made the next one easier. The money in the Horizon account is yours. Clean, legitimate. Take it and build something new. I loved you, that wasn't a lie, but you deserved better than the man I became. J. I read it twice, searching for manipulation, for lies. Found none. I folded the letter and placed it back in the safe. Not forgiveness, I wasn't ready for that. But perhaps understanding. Jake had made his choices. Now I would make mine. I picked up my phone and dialed Flynn's number. I got your package, I said when he answered. Thank you. You're welcome. A pause. How are you doing? I'm rebuilding, I said, looking around at the apartment that was now truly mine. One day at a time. Not starting over, not going back, rebuilding with the strength I'd always had and the wisdom I'd painfully earned.
I'm Lyra. I thought I had a marriage built on trust, until I woke up at 2 a.m. and overheard my husband whisper, "It's done. She'll never find out. $200,000. Gone. Sent to an account I'd never heard of." So before he could file for divorce, I froze everything. But that was just the beginning. Fake documents, anonymous threats. He didn't just want to leave me, he wanted to erase me. And now I can't stop wondering. How long had he been planning it? Was any of it ever real? Do you know what it's like to sleep beside someone who's already plotting your exit? I woke up to the kind of stillness that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels wrong. My hand instinctively reached for the other side of the bed, expecting warmth, a familiar shape, the quiet rhythm of his breath. But the sheets were cool, flat. He hadn't just stepped out. He'd been gone. Maybe he couldn't sleep. Maybe he needed water. I sat up slowly, rubbing the haze from my eyes. The apartment was quiet. Too quiet. Only moonlight spilled through the blinds, painting silver streaks across the floor. Then I heard it. A voice. His voice. Careful. Low. "It's done. She'll never find out." I stopped breathing. For a split second, I froze completely. Every instinct screamed to rush in and demand an explanation. But I didn't move. I stayed still, listening, rationalizing. Maybe it was work. Maybe he was watching a show. Maybe I misunderstood. Or maybe I didn't want to know. A faint laugh followed. Then the soft clink of glass. I crept to the hallway, each step feather-light, a quiet rehearsal in muscle memory. I caught the sound of the fridge closing. Footsteps. He was coming back. I darted under the covers just before the bedroom door opened. I lay still, breathing evenly, pretending. The mattress dipped. He settled beside me, his breath long, exhaling like someone who'd just offloaded a burden. I shifted slightly and mumbled, "Where were you?" "Bathroom," he answered without hesitation. "And the call?" "Client. East Coast stuff. You know how it is." I let silence do the rest. Then I rolled over and faced the window, heart pounding, thoughts racing. By morning, I still hadn't slept. Once he slipped into a deep snore, I got up. Quiet, barefoot. I walked to the kitchen and pulled my phone from the charger. I hadn't checked our joint account in months. That was Callan's role, his financial hat, as he called it. But this time, something in me refused to stay blind. I logged in. A transfer. $200,000 to something called Kale Enterprises. I stared at the name. It wasn't a client, not a vendor, not something we'd ever discussed. My stomach dropped. I refreshed the screen. The number didn't change. Gone. I snapped out of my fog, opened my private cloud, and uploaded everything. Screenshots, logs, transaction details. Triple encrypted. Sent it to a backup email no one else knew. I didn't confront him. Not yet. This wasn't some spontaneous betrayal. It was premeditated, strategic. And I've been a strategist for 15 years. At 6:48 a.m., I called the bank. By 7:15, the account was frozen. I still hadn't said a word to him, but I didn't need to. The morning crept in with a gentleness I didn't trust. I stood at the kitchen window, sipping lukewarm coffee, watching light scatter across the glass buildings downtown. The city was waking up, but inside our apartment, time felt suspended. Behind me, the bedroom door creaked open. Callan's footsteps were soft. Too soft, like a man who wanted to seem casual. "Morning," he said, voice laced with the kind of brightness I used to find charming. "Didn't think you'd be up this early." I turned, offered him a tired smile. "Couldn't sleep." He walked over, pressed a kiss against my temple. I didn't flinch, but I didn't lean in either. "Long night?" I asked lightly. He chuckled. "Yeah, had some stuff on my mind. You know how it is. Startup life never really clocks out." He moved past me and reached for the French press. As he poured himself a mug, I watched him. His hands steady, his body relaxed. He looked like someone without a care in the world. He took a sip, then glanced at me. "Hey, I was thinking, maybe we should consolidate our emergency info." I arched a brow. "What do you mean?" He shrugged, casual. "Just stuff like passwords, accounts, contacts. You know, in case anything ever happens to either of us." "In case something happens?" I repeated. He smiled, warm and easy. "Don't look at me like that. It's just a smart thing to do. I mean, what if I got hit by a bus tomorrow?" That was Callan's style. Wrap poison in honey. Wrap a threat in concern. I set my mug down. "I'll think about it." "Of course," he said quickly. "No rush. Just figured it'd be good to have everything in one place, just in case." The words hung there. Innocent to an outsider. Alarming to someone who had seen the back end of a $200,000 transfer vanish into a ghost account. He wandered into the living room, humming. I stayed rooted in place, head down. The manipulation wasn't loud. It was smooth, polished, and I'd fallen for it before. I sat on the edge of the couch, flipping through a stack of unread mail, and tucked among them was a blank form, subtle but deliberate, an asset declaration sheet. My name already filled in at the top. He hadn't said a word about it. No, "Hey, could you look this over?" No, "Mind signing this when you have a sec?" Just slipped into the pile like junk mail, as if it had always been there. I picked it up, studied the lines meant to list every account I owned, every dollar, every property, every digital wallet. My jaw clenched. He was playing the long game, but he was sloppy. I folded the paper slowly, slid it back between the envelopes, and pushed them aside. He wouldn't catch me off guard twice. As I sat there pretending to scroll my phone, my mind drifted, back to last Thursday. The dinner he insisted we have with my mother. "Just the three of us," he'd said. "Haven't caught up with Era in a while." It had seemed innocent enough. I hadn't suspected a thing. But now, retracing every word, every pause, I saw it differently. He'd booked the place she loved, the little French bistro off Clark. He ordered her favorite wine, toasted to family and the future, said things like, "Lyra and I are looking at long-term plans, real stability stuff." And I had smiled, played along. My mother had teared up halfway through her creme brulee. "I'm so glad you two are still solid," she'd said. "In today's world, real marriages are rare." Callan reached for my hand then, squeezing it just enough to make me believe he meant it. It wasn't love, it was theater. He was rehearsing the lines for an audience. Looking back, I realized he had never mentioned us in that dinner. It was always preparation, structure, legacy, words that belonged in trust documents, not toasts. I came back to the present just as he re-entered the room. "Any plans for today?" he asked, sipping coffee, casually scrolling through his phone. "I have calls at 10, then I'll head into the office for a bit." He nodded. "I might swing by the bank this afternoon, thinking of restructuring a few things on my end." I didn't respond. He was testing me, poking the wire to see if it sparked. He thought I'd walk right into it, confess that I'd frozen the account, that I was suspicious, that I was scared. But I wasn't scared anymore. I was quiet, and quiet women get underestimated. He dropped the last sip of coffee into the sink and disappeared down the hall to shower. I waited until the water started running, then pulled the document out of the mail pile and stared at it one more time. There was a time I would have signed this without blinking, trusted that whatever Callan put in front of me was safe. That time had passed. I tore the form in half, then again and again, until it was nothing but confetti in the trash can. You want to play games, Callan? You just sat across from your new opponent. 2 mornings later, I found the folder. It was tucked inside a stack of mail on the console table, angled just enough to catch my eye. Cream-colored, neat, labeled Taxes March. Nothing threatening at first glance. I carried it to the kitchen, sat down with a glass of water, and flipped it open. There were receipts, summaries, and then a document I'd seen before, but not like this. A property transfer agreement, and my name was typed on the signature line. I stared at it for a long moment. Not handwritten, not initialed, not signed in ink. Typed. Clean. Like someone wanted to skip the messy step of actually asking me. I turned the page back and forth, scanning for details. The condo, the one in my name. A transfer of partial ownership, effective immediately. All it needed was a signature, and someone had faked mine. The pressure in my chest tightened like a vice. 2 weeks ago, Callan had asked me to sign a couple of forms while I was on a call. He stood beside me, waving a pen, smiling like it was nothing. I told him to leave them on the counter. I never signed. I remember that moment with absolute clarity because I'd made a mental note to review the forms later, and when I came back, they were gone. Now here they were, slightly altered, rebranded as tax paperwork. This wasn't carelessness. This was deliberate. I took out my phone, snapped high-res photos of each page, and uploaded them to my encrypted cloud folder. Then I forwarded everything to Marin, my lawyer. No explanation, just a subject line. Callan, for reference. I didn't storm into the bedroom. I didn't throw the papers in his face. If you're going to war, you don't announce it from the front porch. You prepare. I made it into the office that morning without breaking down, which, in itself, felt like a small miracle. My assistant, Nessa, met me with a cautious smile as I stepped into my glass-walled corner suite. "Morning," she said, voice a little too gentle. "You've got back-to-backs starting at 9. "Perfect. Thanks, Nessa," I said, trying to focus. I was halfway through scanning a client brief when she knocked again, this time softly. I looked up. Her eyes didn't meet mine. "You're not gonna like this," she said, stepping inside and shutting the door behind her. "I just heard from someone on the admin floor." I straightened. "Heard what?" "Someone forwarded an email, anonymous sender. It's about you." My heart didn't race. It just went still. She pulled out her phone and handed it to me. I scrolled through the message slowly, reading each word as if it were printed in acid. "Be aware that Lyra Halden has a history of moving joint marital funds into unregistered crypto accounts under false LLC names. Her team should review financial ethics before allowing her continued access to client portfolios. No name, no proof, just enough ambiguity to stir suspicion. And it had been sent to my boss, and copied to HR. I handed the phone back. "Did you read it?" She nodded. "It's garbage. But the timing..." I smiled faintly. "Yeah. The timing, that was Callan's fingerprint. Subtle sabotage, whispered damage." I returned to my desk, opened my email, and there it was, flagged as important. Subject: quick HR check-in today, 2 p.m. That's how it always starts. Quiet, polite. Then it snowballs. I stared at the subject line, not moving. This was what he wanted. If he couldn't control me with money, he'd try to destroy my name, my work, my credibility. Everything I'd built over 15 years of showing up early, delivering under pressure, climbing one rung at a time. I closed my laptop, stood up, and walked to the window. Below me, Chicago pulsed. Cold air and car horns and ambition. I could have screamed. But what was the point? Callan didn't want to fight fair. He wanted to rot me from the inside out. "You steal 200 grand, I whispered, "and still have the nerve to make me the villain?" I didn't cry. Not anymore. I watched my reflection in the window glass. Same eyes, same skin. But something had shifted beneath the surface. No more hesitation. No more hoping he'd stop. He had fired the first shot. Now it was my turn. By the time I stepped into HR the next day, I had already rehearsed every answer. The room smelled like printer toner and faint cologne. Neutral, forgettable. My manager, Devin, sat with a polite expression that didn't reach his eyes. "We just wanted to check in," he said. "There's been a message circulating. Nothing formal, of course. But we need to make sure everything's clean on your end. You understand." I nodded once. "Of course." He used words like protocol and standard inquiry, but the implication was clear. I was a liability until proven otherwise. I didn't flinch. I answered their questions, offered to supply any records they needed. And when it was over, I walked out with my head held high, but my fists were clenched so tightly inside my coat pockets that my nails left half moons on my palms. This wasn't fear anymore. It was something colder, more exact. Back at the apartment, the silence greeted me like an unwanted guest, the kind that sits too close and smells like old secrets. I dropped my keys in the dish and froze. Callan was already home. He sat at the kitchen island, calm, composed, drinking mineral water like it was scotch. "We need to talk," he said, barely looking up. I didn't respond. I hung up my coat, walked into the kitchen, and saw the folder in front of him. Cream-colored. My stomach sank. He slid it toward me with 2 fingers. Inside, petition for divorce. Filed that morning. He was asking for 50% of our shared assets and spousal support. I blinked. "Is this a joke?" He didn't smile. "We've grown apart, Lyra." I stared at him, searching his face for any trace of decency. But there was nothing. Just that corporate calm he wore when firing someone at a board meeting. "You stole from me," I said flatly, "then slandered me at work. And now you're suing me?" "I didn't slander anyone," he replied. "People talk. I can't control that." "Don't lie to me, Callan," I snapped. "Not now." He leaned back on the stool, completely unfazed. "You've been erratic, secretive. I thought maybe this was the cleanest way forward." "You thought," I echoed. "You always think, you calculate, but you forgot one thing." He raised an eyebrow. "Oh?" I stepped closer, dropped the folder on the counter like it burned. "I know everything." His expression didn't change, but the glass in his hand stopped halfway to his lips. "I know about Kale Enterprises. I know the signature you faked. I know about the email to my boss. I even know that you made it look like a crypto fraud, because that's exactly what you would believe a woman like me would fall for." Callan didn't answer right away. His jaw twitched. And then, that familiar, hollow smirk returned. "You don't want to do this, Lyra." My voice dropped to a calm I barely recognized as mine. "Is that a threat?" He shook his head slowly, voice low. "It's a warning." I stepped back. Something inside me clicked, like a gear sliding into place. The version of me that still wanted to believe this man was salvageable was gone. In her place was someone who knew better, someone who had nothing left to lose. "I already moved my assets, Callan." His face finally cracked, just slightly, but enough. The first flicker of panic. "I've been planning this longer than you think," I added. "You're not ahead. You're barely catching up." He stood up slowly, as if posture could reclaim control, but he didn't speak. I left him standing there, in our designer kitchen, surrounded by quartz countertops and empty intentions. I didn't slam the door behind me. I didn't look back. I took the elevator to the lobby, stepped out into the freezing wind, and pulled out my phone. I dialed the number from memory. Marin answered on the second ring. "Hey, what's going on?" "It's time," I said, voice firm. There was a pause. "What did he do now?" "He filed," I said. "He wants half, and he's playing dirty." Another beat. Then Marin replied, "Then so will I. Meet me at the office tomorrow. We start building. I nodded. No more defense. I want to hit back. You will, she said, but we'll do it clean. I hung up and slipped the phone into my pocket, the air slicing through my coat like reality settling in. The woman who had once waited for Callan to apologize no longer existed. There would be no apology, only consequence. The next morning, I was in Marine's office before the sun had fully risen. She was already at her desk, sleeves rolled, coffee untouched. Papers were spread like battlefield maps. She didn't offer small talk. We didn't need it. I've read through his petition, she said. It's nonsense. He's banking on you folding before discovery. I'm not folding, I said. But I need to know where the money went. The $200,000 transfer, it's the key. She nodded, then leaned back. Do you still have that contact? The analyst from Fairfax? Juno? I paused. Yeah, she still owes me one. An hour later, I was dialing Juno Crest's number from Marin's office phone. She picked up on the second ring, voice sharp as ever. Didn't expect to hear from you again? I need a trace run. Clean, fast, quiet. That's how I operate, she said. Send me what you have. By lunchtime, I had forwarded her the full transaction record, plus the screenshots of the Kale Enterprises deposit. Give me 12 hours, she said. I hung up. Marine glanced at me. She reliable? She's better than reliable. She's the one who found a Cayman trail on an international wire fraud case 2 years ago when federal agents missed it. Marine gave a single approving nod. Then we wait. But I didn't wait well. That evening, I paced through the condo. The apartment felt hollow, like even the walls were trying not to listen. I made tea, poured it out, picked up a book, put it down. Finally, around 11:42 p.m., my phone buzzed. Juno Crest. Found something. Can we talk now? We jumped on a call. Her voice was faster this time, more urgent. The $200,000 was routed through Kale Enterprises Lydiard, yes. But it didn't stop there. That's just the shell. I sat up straighter on the couch. Where did it go? 4 more transfers. Belize, then Zurich. All bouncing through shelf companies. But here's the kicker. 3 of the shell names tie back to one woman. She paused. Saris Kale. The name hit me like cold air against bare skin. Who is she? Used to run fraud rings. She's been flagged on financial watch lists for years. No convictions, but the paper trail's ugly. Most people in finance know her name, but no one ever sees her twice. I felt my pulse pick up. So Callan didn't just stash money. He partnered with someone like that? Juno replied. He's either desperate or arrogant enough to think he's safe working with her. I stood slowly, heart hammering. My husband wasn't just trying to escape. He was aligning himself with a professional manipulator. The lies were deeper than I imagined. I wasn't just dealing with betrayal, I was dealing with conspiracy. The next day moved in fragments. I went to work, took meetings, smiled at clients. But inside, I was building timelines, connecting dots, stitching together a strategy like armor. Late afternoon, Juno texted again. Juno Crest. We've got a problem. I called her immediately. They know I'm looking, she said. I got an email this morning, anonymous legal notice. Said I was violating privacy statutes, and if I didn't cease, they'd file. My breath caught. Did they name you directly? Number, but they cited the exact transaction trail I accessed. Callan? I asked. Or Kale? Or someone watching their accounts? I gritted my teeth. I'll cover you. Legal protection. Marine will draw the line if they push. Juno exhaled. I'm in, but this is bigger than I thought. So was I. This was no longer about defending myself. It wasn't just about freezing assets or disproving a rumor. They came for my money. Then my name. Now they were coming for my allies. Enough. I stood at the living room window, the Chicago skyline flickering like it was blinking through my rage. Callan thought I'd sit back while he buried me. He forgot who I was before I was his wife. They thought I'd fold? Number I flipped the board. By the time I met Maureen again, the clouds over Chicago had thickened. Her office felt colder that morning, like it knew we were about to drop a bomb. She pushed a fresh stack of papers across the table. We're filing for fraudulent document use, attempted financial coercion, and reputational defamation, she said. The full package. I scanned the first few lines of the motion. Callan's name in bold, my own just below it. This isn't just self-defense anymore, I said quietly. No, Marin replied. Now it's war. At exactly 9:14 a.m., we filed the counter lawsuit electronically. The confirmation beep from the system sounded like a gunshot. A clean one. For the next several hours, there was silence. No emails from Callan, no sudden texts, no veiled threats disguised as concerns, which, in my world, was worse than noise. He's not staying quiet, I muttered that evening, pacing the apartment. He's recalibrating. Even the floorboards beneath my feet felt like they were holding their breath. I tried to work, tried to focus, but around 8:27 p.m., my bank app kicked me out mid-transaction. At first, I assumed it was a glitch. I re-entered my credentials. Access denied. Tried again. Then tried my secondary account, the one I used for small purchases and errands. Locked. I felt it instantly, that crawling feeling down my spine. Not fear, not yet, but something colder, familiar. I called the bank. After verifying my identity for the 4th time, the agent on the other end cleared her throat. Ma'am, we flagged an attempted login from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, just an hour ago. I froze. From what device? Untraceable, likely masked, but it pinged through a commercial IP, registered to a business name. I closed my eyes. Kale Enterprises? The silence on her end lasted a beat too long. Yes, ma'am. That's what our system shows. I hung up and stood perfectly still in my kitchen, surrounded by clean dishes and humming appliances that suddenly felt too loud. They weren't just attacking my reputation. They were inside my accounts now, inside my daily life. I picked up my phone, called Juno. They're hitting me digitally, I said without preamble. Florida IP. They went for the backup account. Juno didn't curse. She was too professional for that. But her breath hitched. They're escalating, she said. This is intimidation. Classic Cirrus Kale playbook. I'm not afraid, I said. Good, she replied, because it means you're getting close. We hung up, and within 30 minutes, I had a cybersecurity protocol team rerouting everything. New passwords, two-factor encryption, offline wallets, private routers. I even disconnected the smart fridge. You never know what's listening. That night, I didn't sleep. I built firewalls. I uploaded backup drives. I set up physical document redundancy. And when I was done, I sat at my dining table, stared at the framed wedding photo I hadn't taken down yet, and felt something shift again. Not anger, not sadness, precision. You want to scare me? I whispered to no one. You'll have to try harder. I picked up my phone again, opened my notes app, and started drafting my court plan. Not just to defend what I had left, but to make them bleed where it hurt. Strategy. That's what I'd built my career on. That's how I'd survive this. They could hack my files, they could poison my name, but they forgot who wrote the blueprints in the first place. The elevator ride up to the courtroom was quiet. Marin stood beside me, flipping through her folder with surgeon-like focus. Her heels clicked sharply when we stepped into the hallway, a steady rhythm that kept my nerves from fraying at the edges. I sat down on the hard bench outside room 417, my palms flat on my knees, my spine tall. I wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me shake. Marin glanced at me. They're not ready for what we're bringing. I nodded, eyes locked on the door ahead. Callan arrived 5 minutes later with 2 lawyers in tailored suits and an arrogance that could have filled the entire floor. He didn't look at me. Not at first. But I saw the way his jaw tightened when he spotted Marin. Inside the courtroom, the air was stiff with silence. The judge entered, stern, unreadable. We all stood. Then Callan's attorney stood up. Your Honor, our client has reason to believe that Ms. Halden has engaged in intentional financial misrepresentation. We've submitted evidence suggesting that she moved large sums of money without disclosing the intent, violating both fiduciary and marital trust. He passed a thick binder to the clerk, who handed it up to the judge. The documents were stacked with time-stamped screenshots, claims of cryptocurrency purchases, shell company registrations in Lyra's name. My name. They had created a fiction and dressed it in legal formatting. Callan looked smug, like a man who thought he'd already won the game before the pieces were even in place. Then it was Marin's turn. She rose slowly, unshaken, professional, her voice calm but cutting. Your Honor, we've reviewed these documents. We've also submitted forensic reports from 2 independent analysts. Both confirm that several of the alleged accounts in question did not exist at the time these transfers were supposedly made. She turned, handed her own folder to the judge. Furthermore, the email metadata and server paths prove that these documents were created after our client filed her counterclaim, suggesting motive and intent to mislead. The courtroom fell still. Even Callan's posture shifted, just slightly. A small crack in the marble. Marin continued. We respectfully submit a motion to dismiss Mr. Voss's claim in full and to file a defamation suit against both Mr. Voss and any known associates responsible for document fabrication. The judge took a moment, maybe 2, flipping pages, reviewing timestamps. No one dared breathe. Then he looked up. Mr. Voss, he said slowly, your claims are unsupported. This motion is denied. My ears didn't register the rest, just the thud in my chest, hard, final, the kind of sound that silences storms. Across the aisle, Callan sat frozen. His lawyer leaned in and whispered something sharp. I didn't need to hear it. I could read it in Callan's eyes. Panic. Outside the courtroom, the hallway echoed with the shuffle of feet and whispered shock. I didn't wait. I walked past him, past his team, past every fake smile and casual glance. But Callan stepped into my path, low voice tight with rage. You think this is over? I didn't stop. Just wait, he hissed, louder this time. You don't know what I still have. I turned, just slightly, and met his eyes. I know exactly what you are. That was enough. He didn't speak again. He just watched me walk away, like a man watching the fuse burn, still convinced it wouldn't reach the dynamite. But it would. It was Juno who cracked the final code. She called just after 7 a.m., voice flat with disbelief. Lyra, the metadata, it's worse than we thought. I paused mid-step on my way to the kitchen. How bad? The files Callan submitted? The ones Cirrus prepared? Yeah? They were created 4 days after he filed the initial claim. He backdated them, deliberately. I didn't respond right away. Just let her words settle into place like puzzle pieces clicking in reverse. Juno added, It's clean. Undeniable. It's over if the judge sees this. I didn't need coffee anymore. By 8:30 a.m., I was sitting across from Maureen in her office, fingers curled tight around a fresh folder stamped with evidence. She glanced over the documents, lips pressed together. This is it. This ends it. The motion we filed that afternoon included everything: perjury, falsification of legal documents, conspiracy to defraud marital assets. Cirrus Kale was named as co-defendant for knowingly assisting and providing fraudulent documents. Juno's forensic breakdown attached at the end was bulletproof. Charts, timestamps, verification trails. Everything pointed to a carefully orchestrated digital lie. We submitted it just before closing hours. The final hearing was set for the next morning. It rained that day. Chicago's sky had a way of syncing itself with your heartbeat, and mine thundered steady and heavy as I walked into the courtroom. Callan was already there. He looked smaller somehow, not physically, but in presence. His suit still perfect, his hair still sculpted, but the shoulders were tighter, his gaze less cocky. He saw the folder in Marine's hand and blinked twice. That's when I knew he felt it too. The judge took the bench and wasted no time. Marin presented the updated findings, walked the room through Juno's evidence, layer by damning layer. Callan's attorney tried to interrupt. Once. The judge waved him off. 10 minutes later, it was done. All claims submitted by Mr. Voss are hereby dismissed. The evidence supports fabrication. As such, the court recognizes Ms. Halden's counterclaim as valid and will be awarding damages accordingly. Legal costs will be assumed by Mr. Voss. Additionally, this court is initiating a referral to the state attorney's office regarding Ms. Kyle's potential criminal conduct. The gavel dropped like thunder. Callan didn't move. The courtroom emptied around us. He stayed frozen in his seat, knuckles pale, eyes locked ahead like he was still computing how this happened. Outside, I didn't speak until he finally caught up to me in the lobby. "You think you've won?" he asked quietly. His voice wasn't arrogant anymore. Just tired. Hollow. I looked him in the eyes and said, "No." I just finally stopped losing. He didn't answer, didn't even try. I left him standing there like a man watching the scaffolding of his lies collapse all at once. Later that evening, I stood in my apartment, the same one Callan once tried to put in his name, and checked the accounts. Nothing had moved. Everything was exactly where it should be. Untouched, secure. For the first time in months, I let out a real breath, not relief, closure. I closed the financial dashboard and walked over to my desk. Opened my laptop. There was a document I hadn't opened since the beginning of this war, something I started the night I froze the first account. Now I picked it back up and started typing again. "This is my story now," I wrote, and this time I meant every word. It had been 3 weeks since the courtroom doors closed behind me for the last time. Long enough for the adrenaline to settle, not long enough for the quiet to feel normal. On a Thursday morning, I changed every password I owned. Personal, professional, financial. Every login that once felt routine now felt like reopening a wound. But I did it anyway. As I clicked confirm for the last account, a strange stillness followed. The war was over. The noise had stopped, but my mind hadn't quite caught up. I looked around my apartment, our apartment once, and realized how much of him still lingered. A photo tucked in a side drawer, a pair of cufflinks he never wore, still in their box by the entryway. That afternoon, I packed everything that felt shared or poisoned into a cardboard box and carried it downstairs to the building's donation bin. I didn't burn it. I didn't break it. I just let it go. It wasn't about anger anymore. It was about making room. Around sunset, my mom stopped by. Era brought lemon ginger tea, like she used to when I got sick in college. She sat quietly for a while before saying, "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." I shook my head. I didn't either, until I couldn't unsee it. She placed a hand over mine. "You didn't fail, Lyra. You trusted. And when it broke, you stood back up." I didn't reply. I just squeezed her hand and let her words settle in the quiet. After she left, I lit a candle in the kitchen. Not for scent, but for stillness. Then I checked my phone. A message from Juno blinked on the screen. "Got the offer?" I said yes. "You were right. I wasn't built to work in someone else's shadow." "Thank you," I smiled. Small but real. Minutes later, Marin called to confirm the paperwork was officially closed. "Funds released. Case sealed. No more hearings." Her voice was crisp with finality. I thanked her, then paused before hanging up. "Marin." "Yeah?" "Did I win?" There was a pause, then her reply. "You didn't just win, Lyra. You rewrote the rules." I sat in silence after that, and for the first time, it wasn't heavy. That weekend, I walked through Grant Park alone. The trees were just beginning to turn, leaves edged in orange, the air sharper than it had been just a week ago. I sat on a bench across from the fountain and watched a couple pass by, holding hands. They laughed at something I couldn't hear. Part of me felt hollow watching them. Another part felt relieved. Because I knew now, survival isn't about dodging the pain. It's about standing inside it until it teaches you something. I don't forgive Callan. I probably never will. But I forgave myself for staying too long, for hoping too hard, for handing over too much. Closure doesn't come in courtrooms. It comes in quiet and in choice. Later that night, I climbed up to my rooftop terrace. The city hummed below me, endless windows, blurred traffic, glowing signs promising everything and nothing. I opened my laptop. There it was, the file I'd named Exit Strategy. Funny how it had become something else entirely. I added one last paragraph. You are not what they did to you. You are what you do next. Then I hit save. The screen faded to black as I closed the lid. No music played, no dramatic thunder in the distance, just the soft breeze against my skin, the sound of my own breath. Still, alive, and finally, free. Before I go, let me leave you with this. I used to think strength meant staying silent, holding things together, keeping peace even when I was breaking inside. But strength, real strength, is walking away from what was never safe to begin with. If you're watching this and you've ever been lied to, used, silenced, or made to question your own worth, I see you. You're not alone. And more importantly, you're not broken. You are not your past. You are your next decision. You get to rebuild. You get to set the rules. And you don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing peace over performance. For me, the most powerful move wasn't revenge. It was reclaiming my voice. So let me ask you, what would you do if you stopped waiting for someone to change and started becoming who you were always meant to be? Let's talk about it. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever had to walk away from something that nearly cost you? Or maybe you're still in it and just needed a sign. Maybe this is it. If this story touched you, even just a little, type 1 in the comments, or let me know what city you're watching from. If you didn't like it, that's okay too. Tell me why. Tell me what you'd do differently. This is a space for honest stories and stronger hearts. And if you want more true stories that hit deep, about betrayal, survival, healing, and hope, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. We've got more coming, and someone out there needs your strength too. You stayed with me till the end, and for that, I'm grateful. Until next time, take care of your peace. It's worth everything. I'm Marlo, and let me tell you, nothing hits harder than realizing your own family made a place for you at the kids' table. At my sister's birthday, I showed up, dressed like an adult, expected to be treated like family, and instead, they sat me with the children like I didn't belong. But that wasn't the worst part. That night, I walked away quietly. But what I didn't know was how deep the cracks ran. The lies, the manipulation, the betrayal. It didn't start at that party. It started long before, when they decided I'd always be the outsider. And what I uncovered after I left, well, let's just say, it nearly burned the whole family down. So why would a family go so far to erase one of their own? It started with a ping. A family group chat notification lit up my phone that Thursday afternoon while I was buried in paperwork at my apartment in Houston. Clarissa Carter, Mom. Hey Marlo! Hope you can make it Saturday. We're throwing Celine's birthday at the Monarch. Saved you a seat with the family and kids. Let me know. It wasn't an invitation. It was a reminder, a subtle signal of where I stood. A seat with the kids, again. Like always, I stared at the message, wondering why I still let it sting. But I didn't respond right away. I'd learned to swallow that feeling, like background noise you live with. As the weekend neared, the group chat lit up with excitement about the rooftop dinner, the cake, the guest list, and that old weight settled in my chest again. Familiar, quiet, heavy. Saturday came too fast. I worked most of the day, tempted to use my workload as an excuse. But guilt, or duty, won out. At 6:45 p.m., I pulled on a navy blue dress that felt more like armor than fashion. By 7:30, I was driving down I-45 toward Austin, headlights cutting through the dark. I told myself I wasn't going for them. I was going because if I didn't, they'd say I was difficult, dramatic, playing the victim. By 8:45, I was outside the Monarch, an upscale rooftop spot glowing with fairy lights. Luxury cars lined the valet. I checked my reflection, forced a smile, and stepped inside. I knew immediately I didn't belong here, not really. Laughter rang out too loud. Conversations felt too curated. The hostess greeted me with a careful smile. "Name?" "Marlo Carter," I said, smoothing my dress. She scanned her list too long. "Ah, table C, with the family and kids." She gestured to a corner near the railing. High chairs, crayons, booster seats. I swallowed the heat rising in my chest and walked over. The kids barely looked up. The adults were at the bar, glasses clinking, deep in conversation. Clarissa passed me once, champagne in hand. She gave me a nod and kept walking. Celine stood glowing at the center, the star of the night, surrounded by admiration. I sat at table C, invisible. People noticed. Their looks said it all: pity, amusement. She's still here, still trying. It wasn't just about the seat. It was the years of being overlooked, the forgotten birthdays, the holiday photos I was asked to take, not be in. Always the quiet one, the dependable one, so Celine could shine. At 9:30, the lights dimmed. Clarissa took the mic. "Thank you for coming to celebrate our shining star, Celine," she said. She thanked everyone: Celine's friends, Cassian's family, the kids, the staff, even the bartender, but not me. By 9:45, I stood up and left. Quietly. No one noticed. No one stopped me. At the door, I glanced back. Celine laughed, radiant, adored. I walked away. What I didn't know was that walking out wouldn't be the end. It would be the start of everything unraveling. I didn't stop walking until the glow of the Monarch's rooftop lights faded behind me, swallowed by the Austin skyline. The sound of glasses clinking and fake laughter still echoed in my ears as I reached my car parked 2 blocks away. I slipped behind the wheel, sat there for a moment, staring blankly at the steering wheel, trying to shake off the tightness in my chest. As I sat in the driver's seat, the memory of Clarissa's voice from just minutes ago played on a cruel loop inside my head. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate our shining star, Celine, and to all our wonderful guests, Cassian's family, Celine's friends, and of course, our amazing family." Her words floated above the crowd like confetti, warm, inclusive, until they weren't. Because when her eyes swept the tables, they passed over mine like I wasn't even there. I remembered how she thanked the kids at my table, thanked the staff, even thanked the damn bartender, but never once said my name. By the time I started the car and pulled away from the curb, it was almost 10 p.m. The streets of downtown Austin buzzed with people spilling out of restaurants, couples holding hands, groups laughing too loud. I kept driving in silence. Halfway back to Houston, headlights slicing through the night, I felt it. This dull ache under my ribcage that wasn't just from tonight. It was an old wound, something I'd learned to carry, like a chipped tooth you learn not to bite down on. Because tonight wasn't new, it was just the most public. As the miles passed beneath me, my mind went back, like it always did, to all the moments that built this one. I thought about Christmas dinners when Clarissa would gush about Celine's promotions or her perfect boyfriend, then glance at me with that empty smile, as if she couldn't remember what I'd been doing that year. I thought about high school graduations, family BBQs, birthdays, especially birthdays. My knuckles tightened around the steering wheel when a memory I hadn't let myself touch in years resurfaced. I was 12. It was a gray February afternoon, and I came home from school to find Clarissa busy frosting cupcakes, balloons taped across the kitchen cabinets. My heart jumped. Maybe she remembered. Except the balloons were pink and silver, and the cupcakes were for Celine's 10th birthday. My birthday had been 3 weeks earlier. I'd spend it alone in my room with a store-bought cake I picked up myself. That night, when I finally asked Mom why she hadn't done anything, she smiled like I'd asked something silly. "You're older now, Marlo. You don't need all that." As if growing up meant you stopped deserving to be seen. I let the memory settle heavy in my chest as I merged onto Interstate 10. The clock on the dashboard blinked 11:45 p.m. By the time I reached Houston and pulled into my apartment complex, it was after midnight. The city was quieter here, streetlights casting long shadows across the empty parking lot. I parked, climbed the stairs to my second-floor unit, and unlocked the door to the stillness waiting inside. I kicked off my heels, set my phone face down on the counter without checking it, and walked straight to the living room window. Outside, the city lights stretched out like tiny fires, and for a long moment, I just stood there, breathing. It hit me then, how exhausted I was. Not from the drive, but from everything leading up to tonight. From years of pretending the crumbs they tossed my way were enough. The speech, the empty chair, the kids' table. It wasn't about the party. It never had been. It was about being invisible in a family that smiled for photos, but never saw me standing right there. Somewhere deep down, I knew this night would change something. I didn't know how or when, but there was a shift inside me. A thread pulled too tight, finally snapping loose. I turned away from the window, grabbed my phone, and checked it without thinking. 3 missed texts, all from Clarissa. "You didn't have to leave like that. It was Celine's night. I hope you're not making this about you again. Call me when you calm down." I laughed under my breath, low, humorless, the audacity. I set the phone back down and stood in the middle of my apartment, realizing for the first time that night, I was done trying to belong. I walked out of that party thinking I was leaving the past behind. But what I didn't know then was that walking away wasn't the end. It was the beginning of the reckoning. The texts from Clarissa were still sitting on my phone when I woke up the next morning, as if they'd been waiting all night to remind me I was the problem. I'd left my phone face down on the kitchen counter before collapsing into bed around 1 a.m., too drained to deal with anyone's guilt trip messages. When I finally rolled out of bed at 8 a.m., sunlight cutting through the slats of my blinds, the weight of last night returned before my feet even touched the floor. I made coffee on autopilot, trying to shake the heaviness in my chest. It wasn't just exhaustion. It was that old gnawing ache, the one that started years before anyone sent me a text saying I was too sensitive. The coffee maker beeped, pulling me back. I poured a mug, sat down on the edge of my couch, and finally picked up my phone. More messages. Clarissa again. "You didn't have to leave like that. It was Celine's day." A second one, time-stamped after midnight. "Honestly, Marlo, you could have just smiled and gotten through the night. Why do you always have to make it about you?" And then Celine. Hers arrived just after 1:30 a.m. "Grow up, Marlo. You've always needed to be the center of attention. You couldn't let me have one night without making a scene." I stared at the screen, the bitter taste in my mouth sharper than the coffee. There it was. Even when I quietly walked away, even when I didn't say a word, they still blamed me. I put the phone down, but my thoughts kept circling like vultures. This wasn't new. It wasn't the first time they painted me as selfish for reacting to being overlooked. I'd spent a lifetime walking that tightrope. If I spoke up, I was dramatic. If I stayed quiet, I disappeared. The pattern was so familiar, so rehearsed, it almost made me laugh. But underneath that numbness, something sharper stirred. After I showered and dressed, I spent the rest of the morning cleaning, scrubbing counters that were already spotless, rearranging books that didn't need moving. Anything to keep myself from sitting still long enough to let the rage catch up to me. By noon, I gave up pretending I could avoid it. I sat back down on the couch, scrolling through my phone again, wondering if the weight in my chest would ever let up. That's when I saw it. One unread message at the bottom of the pile. From Dad. Edgar Carter wasn't the kind of man who sent texts at all, much less in the middle of family chaos. But there it was. Sent at 2:07 a.m. Marlo, I'm sorry. I should have said something years ago. I knew how they treated you. I was just too weak to stop it. The words blurred on the screen. For a long moment, I didn't move. I just stared, letting the words land like a quiet earthquake. I couldn't even remember the last time my father admitted to noticing anything, let alone acknowledged what I'd felt my entire life. It wasn't an apology, not really, but it cracked something open, because it meant I hadn't imagined it. I hadn't been too sensitive. He'd seen it too, and he did nothing. I leaned back, the ceiling fan spinning lazily above me. My coffee had gone cold. My chest felt heavy, but not in the same way as before. The truth settled in, slow and sobering. This wasn't about one birthday party. It wasn't even about Celine being the golden child or Clarissa weaponizing guilt like a second language. This was about the system they built, a story I'd been cast in without consent. I was the villain in their narrative because it made them the heroes. I didn't reply to anyone's texts that morning. Not Clarissa, not Celine, not even Dad. Instead, I sat there, staring at the screen until the words blurred again, and decided, no more silence, no more pretending. They wanted me to play the part of the problem. Maybe it was time I showed them what the problem really looked like. I didn't know how deep the lies went, but I was about to find out. The message came 2 days later, on a rainy Tuesday afternoon, when I thought the storm had passed. I'd spent most of the day working from home, answering emails and pretending that what happened at the Monarch was behind me. The drizzle tapping against my window matched the rhythm of my thoughts. Quiet, relentless, hard to ignore. It wasn't until late afternoon, around 4 p.m., that my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar name lighting up the screen. Cassian Brooks. I hesitated before opening it. Cassian was Celine's boyfriend. We'd barely exchanged more than polite hellos over the years. He was part of her orbit, not mine. His message was short. Marlo, can we talk? Coffee? Tomorrow morning? I stared at the screen, suspicion curling in my stomach. Why would he want to talk to me? Still, curiosity won. The next morning, the clouds had cleared, but the air felt heavy. I made the drive back to Austin, a part of me wondering if I was being foolish, if this was another setup I hadn't seen coming. By 9 a.m., I was sitting at a corner table in a quiet coffee shop downtown, nursing a latte I didn't really want. Cassian walked in 5 minutes later, looking like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked. Dark circles smudged beneath his eyes. He scanned the room until he spotted me, then walked over. Marlo, he greeted, voice stiff. Cassian, I replied, motioning for him to sit. Didn't expect to hear from you? He sat across from me, fiddling with his coffee cup like he didn't know where to begin. I shouldn't be here, he said finally, but after what I heard, I couldn't keep quiet. That got my attention. He glanced around, lowering his voice. The night of the party, before everyone arrived, I overheard Clarissa and Celine. My stomach tightened. Overheard what? Cassian exhaled, shoulders slumping. They were in the back lounge, laughing about how you'd react when you saw your table. I didn't move. I couldn't. They said, he swallowed, eyes meeting mine. They said you'd finally know your place when you were seated with the kids. And then Clarissa joked, she'll never leave. She needs us more than we need her. His words cracked something open inside me, sharp and immediate. It hadn't been carelessness. It hadn't been an oversight. It had been cruelty, calculated, deliberate. For a moment, the sound of the coffee shop around me faded. All I could hear was that voice in my head whispering the same thing it always had. You don't matter. I looked down at my hands, curling them into fists beneath the table. Cassian cleared his throat. I thought maybe it was just a bad joke. But the way you left that night, I realized it wasn't the first time, was it? I shook my head slowly, the weight of it pressing down on me. No, I said quietly. It's never just one night. Images flickered behind my eyes. Birthday parties where I wasn't mentioned. Holidays where I took the photos instead of being in them. whispered comments about how I was too sensitive, too much, or worse, invisible. Cassian's voice broke through the spiral. "I'm sorry," he said. "I should have said something sooner." I met his gaze then, something cold settling in my chest. "It's not your apology I need," I replied, "but thank you." He shifted uncomfortably. "I don't think they understand what they've done." A bitter smile touched my lips. "Oh, they understand. They've been doing it my entire life." For the first time in days, I felt something shift. Not sadness, not helplessness, resolve. I leaned back, my voice steady. "They think I won't do anything. They're wrong." Cassian nodded, like he understood more than he wanted to. I stood up, sliding my chair back quietly. As I grabbed my coat, I glanced at him one last time. "Thanks for telling me," I said, "but this isn't your fight." When I stepped out into the bright morning light, the decision was already made. The game they'd been playing, I was finally ready to play back. I drove back to Houston after that meeting with Cassian, the weight in my chest heavier than when I'd arrived in Austin. But there was something else burning underneath it. Clarity. For the next 2 days, I kept my head down. I went to work, answered emails, paid bills. On the surface, I was living my usual life. But under all of that, something in me had shifted. On the third morning, as I was sorting through invoices in my home office, my phone rang. It wasn't a number I recognized, but the area code was Austin. For a moment, I considered letting it go to voicemail. Then something told me to pick up. "Hello?" I answered, cautious. A calm, measured voice replied. "Marlo?" "This is Mirabelle Brooks." My heart stopped for a beat. Cassian's mother. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and people stopped talking, not out of fear, but because they wanted to hear what she'd say. "We've never spoken directly," she continued, "but I think we should." I cleared my throat. "What is this about?" She paused, then said quietly, "I'd rather not discuss it over the phone." "Could you meet me? I believe we have something in common." An hour later, I was back on the road toward Austin, wondering how many more surprises this family could throw at me. We met at an upscale cafe tucked into a quiet corner of downtown. The kind of place where everyone wore pressed clothes and whispered politely. Mirabelle was already seated when I arrived, perfectly composed in a cream blazer, a porcelain cup of tea in front of her. She stood when I approached. "Marlo," she greeted, extending her hand. "Thank you for coming." I sat across from her, folding my hands on the table. "I won't waste your time," she began, sliding a manila folder across the table toward me. "I wanted you to see this before it becomes public knowledge." I glanced down at the folder, but didn't open it yet. "What is it?" Mirabelle's gaze didn't waver. "Documentation showing that Celine attempted to use the Brooks family name to secure a private business loan, without Cassian's knowledge or consent." Her voice remained steady, but I could hear the steel underneath. I opened the folder. Inside were copies of emails, loan applications, even a draft agreement where Celine listed herself as a family representative. It was all there, names, dates, signatures she wasn't authorized to use. I swallowed hard, each page heavier than the last. She was counting on Cassian's family money to back her new venture, Mirabelle said quietly, without ever asking. My fingers tightened around the edge of the folder. This is fraud," Mirabelle nodded once. "And manipulation, which, I believe, isn't new behavior in your family." I looked up at her, something icy settling behind my ribs. "You knew she was capable of this?" "I suspected," she said simply, "but what I heard after the party confirmed it." For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hum of the cafe felt far away, like background noise to something larger, uglier. When I finally spoke, my voice was quieter but sharper. "Why tell me?" Mirabelle folded her hands. "Because you're the only one who seems willing to see the truth." When I left the cafe 20 minutes later, the folder was in my bag and my phone was already in my hand. I didn't hesitate. By the time I reached my car, I had sent the message to Clarissa and Celine, both. Why, if you keep trying to control me and hurt others, I won't stay quiet anymore. The response from Clarissa came within minutes. Marlo, you're being dramatic. This is family business. You always blow things out of proportion. Celine, of course, said nothing. I sat there in my car, staring at the screen, feeling the heat rise behind my eyes. Not from hurt this time, but from anger. They weren't even surprised. They didn't deny it. They dismissed me like they always had. But this wasn't like before. Because now, I had proof. This wasn't about birthday parties or forgotten names and speeches anymore. This was about how far they were willing to go to keep me in my place, and how far I'd have to go to tear that place down. I took a breath, steadying myself, and typed one final message to Clarissa. Keep pretending this is nothing. You're about to see exactly how much nothing looks like when it burns. I hit send. They thought I wouldn't fight back. They were about to see just how wrong they were. The message I sent to Clarissa burned in the back of my mind long after I hit send. For 2 days, the silence was deafening. No texts, no calls, no carefully worded apologies. Just quiet. Until the knock at my door. It was Thursday evening. I'd spent most of the day working from home, reviewing financial reports for a client, trying to pretend the storm wasn't circling closer. Around 7:30 p.m., I was just about to shut down my laptop when the pounding came, a sharp, impatient knock that rattled the door. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Celine. When I opened the door, she was standing there, arms crossed, eyes narrowed like I'd personally set her world on fire. Can I come in? She asked, her voice tight. I didn't bother to hide my sigh. I guess. She brushed past me, walking into the living room like she owned the place. The second the door closed behind us, she spun to face me. Are you seriously trying to ruin my life? There it was. No hello, no explanation, straight to the accusation. I folded my arms. You showed up uninvited to my home to ask me that? She took a step forward. You've been talking to Mirabelle, to Cassian, spreading lies. I shook my head, a dry laugh slipping out. No lies, Celine, just facts, ones you worked really hard to bury. Her lips curled into something between a sneer and a smirk. You're jealous. You always have been. Jealous? I repeated, incredulous. Of what? The lies? The manipulation? Celine rolled her eyes. Oh, please. You've always needed someone to blame for why your life is so sad. That word snapped something in me. Don't, I warned quietly. She ignored me. You couldn't stand that it was my night, that Mom loves me more. So now you're what? Playing detective? Digging up things that aren't your business? I took a slow breath, forcing myself to stay steady. Celine, it became my business when you dragged my name through the mud and laughed about it. When you sat back and let Mom treat me like a footnote for 30 years. Her jaw tightened. I stepped closer. You don't get to walk in here and pretend like I'm the one who started this. For a second, I saw something flicker behind her eyes. Uncertainty. But she buried it quickly. You need to drop this, Marlo, she snapped. You're about to tear this family apart. I met her glare, something cold settling in my chest. Maybe it needs to break, I said softly. Maybe that's the only way to rebuild it without all the rot. Celine scoffed. You're unbelievable. Without another word, she stormed toward the door, yanking it open. Before she left, she turned back one last time. You're gonna regret this. The door slammed behind her. I stood there for a long moment, heart pounding, not with fear, but with something sharper. Resolve. Later that night, around 10 p.m., I was on the couch with a book I wasn't reading when my phone pinged. An email. From Clarissa. Subject line, let's not do this. I clicked it open. Sweetheart, it began. I know you're upset, but this doesn't have to get ugly. You know how Celine is. She doesn't mean half the things she says. Don't let this tear our family apart. There it was again. That carefully polished, insincere tone. The fake concern. The manipulation. The email ended with, Let's talk soon. I know you don't really mean to cause trouble. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I deleted the message without replying. I wasn't falling for it anymore. No more gaslighting. No more pretending this was normal. I closed my laptop and sat in the dark, the hum of the city outside my window like background noise to the decision already made inside me. If they wanted a fight, they were about to get one. The days after Selene showed up at my door passed like a blur of static. I went to work. I logged into meetings. I smiled politely at the neighbors in the hallway. But something in me had hardened. By the 6th day after the party, the war began. It started quietly. A co-worker in my office's break room gave me a strange look as I poured my coffee. Someone I barely spoke to, a woman named Ashley, said under her breath, "Hey, hope you're doing okay? Heard things have been rough at home." I frowned, forcing a polite smile. "I'm fine, thanks." That was the first crack. By lunchtime, 3 more colleagues had awkwardly mentioned family drama I hadn't told them about. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Small-town gossip. Maybe someone saw Celine outside my apartment the other night. But when I checked my phone at 3 p.m., it was undeniable. Group chat messages, extended family threads, even a few DMS on Facebook, all hinting at the same thing. "Is everything okay, Marlo? Your mom mentioned you've been struggling. I hope you're getting help. Clarissa said you've been lashing out a lot lately. Celine said you left her party in tears. Wish you'd just talk to her." My hands tightened around the phone as I scrolled, the words blurring together in one sickening thread. They were painting me unstable, mentally fragile, bitter, the unstable daughter causing family chaos. I set the phone down, breath shallow. They weren't just fighting back. They were trying to discredit me. Clarissa and Selene had done this before, in smaller ways. Little comments about how I overreacted, how I was too emotional. But now it was public. They were playing dirty. By evening, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Aunt Carol, who I hadn't spoken to in 2 years, texted, "I know you're hurting, honey. Don't burn bridges." One of my closest friends called, voice hesitant. "Your mom reached out to me, said you're spiraling. The word echoed in my head like a slap. I stood at my kitchen window, staring out at the Houston skyline, fury pulsing behind my ribs. This was how they'd always won. Not by fighting fair, but by convincing everyone else I was the problem. And for most of my life, I'd let them. Not this time. I grabbed my phone and scrolled back through my messages until I found Cassian's name. My thumb hovered for a moment before I typed, "You deserve to know the truth. Before you marry into this." I attached every document Mirabelle had given me, the emails, the fake loan agreements, the messages Clarissa and Selene had sent over the years. Then I added one more message. "They've spent their whole lives making me the villain, but you should know who's really pulling the strings." I hit send. It was almost midnight when I shut my laptop, the last remnants of my workday forgotten. The smear campaign had made one thing clear. There was no going back. I wasn't the family problem. I was the only one who'd finally stopped pretending. As I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the silence felt heavier than ever, but it wasn't suffocating. It was the calm before the storm. They tried to silence me. Instead, I just handed them the match. The fallout came faster than I expected. By the next morning, my phone buzzed with a single message from Cassian. "We need to talk." That was it. No hello, no pleasantries. The same Cassian who, a week ago, had barely spoken to me beyond polite nods, now wanted to talk. I replied with a simple, "Tell me when and where." That afternoon, I drove back to Austin. The clouds hanging low over the city felt like a weight pressing against my chest. When I arrived at Cassian's house, he was already waiting by the front door, hands shoved in his pockets, jaw tight. He didn't invite me inside. Instead, he spoke right there on the porch. "I ended it," he said without preamble, "with Celine." I blinked, trying to process. He went on, "After everything you sent me, the financial documents, the messages, the lies, I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was no triumph in his voice, just exhaustion. My family knows, he added. The investors pulled out of her startup this morning. The wedding's off. A beat of silence stretched between us. She'll blame you, I said quietly. Cassian gave a bitter smile. She already does. I nodded, my throat tight. Thank you for listening, I said. He shook his head. Thank you for telling me. When I drove back to Houston that evening, the sun had dipped low, casting long shadows across the freeway. For a moment, I felt lighter. But I knew better than to believe the storm was over. By the time I got home, there was an email waiting for me. Subject line, "Can we talk?" It was from Clarissa. My stomach twisted as I opened it. Marlo, it began, I think we've all let things get out of hand. I'd love to sit down over dinner and talk this through. This family doesn't need more division. Celine's hurting. You don't need to destroy her future over old wounds. She signed it. Love, Mom. For a long time, I stared at the screen, rereading the words. It was everything I'd heard my whole life, wrapped in sweet concern and hidden threats. Don't ruin the family. Don't hold grudges. Don't make this about you. I closed the email without replying. For years, I'd bent myself backward to be the daughter they wanted. I'd swallowed every slight, ignored every wound. All for what? So they could rewrite the story and make me the villain? Not anymore. That night, after a long shower and a glass of wine, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I typed a reply to Clarissa's email. No. That was it. No explanation, no apology, no more pretending. I hit send. Then I blocked her number. The next few days passed in eerie quiet. The family group chat went silent. Celine's social media accounts disappeared one by one. Friends who used to comment under every post fell off the radar. The whispers in the background were still there, of course. Co-workers, distant cousins, people who had opinions about family drama that wasn't theirs. But I stopped listening. I'd spent my whole life trying to fix something that wasn't broken by me. And now, for the first time, I didn't care how the story sounded to anyone else. Late one evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the Houston skyline glow against the night, my phone buzzed with one last message from an old family friend. I don't know what's happening, but I hope you're okay. I smiled faintly, setting the phone down. I was okay. For the first time in my life, I chose myself, and there was no turning back. The days after everything collapsed stretched out like empty pages. It had been 2 weeks since Cassian called off the wedding, 2 weeks since Celine disappeared from every social platform she once dominated, 2 weeks since Clarissa's last attempt to pull me back in had failed, and the silence was deafening. The family group chat remained a graveyard. No memes, no family updates, no half-hearted birthday wishes. For years, I'd craved that chat's attention. I used to check it obsessively, hoping to see my name, to be included in the jokes, the photos, the plans. Now, it sat there, unread, irrelevant. In a way, it felt like mourning something that had died long ago. I didn't miss them. I missed who I thought they could be. One quiet Tuesday morning, as I was cleaning out my inbox, a new email appeared. From Clarissa, no subject line. I hesitated for a long moment before opening it. There was no long apology, no dramatic plea. Just one sentence. I hope you find what you're looking for. I stared at it, waiting to feel something, anger, grief, maybe even guilt, but I felt nothing at all. I clicked delete without replying. Later that afternoon, I left my apartment and walked down to the city park. It was one of those crisp spring days in Houston where the air felt lighter, almost forgiving. Kids laughed near the playground, dog owners chatted over coffee cups, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel like an outsider watching life happen without me. I sat on a bench under a wide oak tree, letting the breeze wash over me. My phone vibrated in my pocket, but I ignored it. For once, no message mattered more than this moment. I thought about everything that had happened. The birthday party, the insults, the lies, The manipulation. For so long, I'd believed that if I just worked harder, stayed quieter, made myself smaller, they'd let me belong. But that night, when I walked away from Celine's birthday party, I hadn't lost anything. I'd started finding myself. And it wasn't perfect. The wounds were still there, still tender beneath the surface, but they no longer controlled me. The park around me buzzed with life. A little girl zipped past on a scooter, her parents cheering her on. For a brief second, I thought about my own childhood. The birthdays without cake, the empty chairs, the long nights wondering what I'd done wrong. And then I let it go. Because I knew now, closure doesn't come from the people who hurt you. It comes when you stop waiting for them to fix what they broke and start building something better for yourself. Before I stood up to leave, I pulled out my phone one last time and typed a message in my notes. Not to send to anyone, just to remind myself. You don't have to sit at a table where you're not welcome. You can always build your own. As I walked away from the park, the Houston skyline glittering ahead, I smiled. I left that night thinking I'd lost a family. But what I really did was find myself. And before I end this story, let me leave you with something I wish someone had told me a long time ago. Sometimes the people who should love you the most are the ones who hurt you the deepest. Not because you're unworthy, but because they're too broken to see you clearly. And you will waste years, maybe decades, trying to earn a seat at a table that was never built for you. But here's the truth I learned the hard way. You don't need anyone's permission to choose peace. You don't owe anyone your silence in exchange for their approval. Walking away isn't weakness, it's freedom. If you've ever felt invisible in your own family, or like no matter how hard you try, you're always the problem. This story was for you. Because you're not the problem. You're the one finally brave enough to stop pretending everything's okay. Now, I'd love to hear from you. Have you ever had to walk away from people you thought you couldn't live without, just to finally breathe again? Drop a 1 in the comments if this story hit home for you. Or tell me, where are you watching from? Your stories, your struggles, your victories matter here. And hey, if this video made you feel seen, if it gave you even a sliver of strength, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. There are more stories like this one waiting for you. Thank you for being here. And remember, you are never too old, too broken, or too late to start writing your own story.